Hello, everyone, and welcome to this joint Amazon and Human webinar. I'm delighted to be joined by Igor Kushnirov, who is a Senior Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. My name is Peter Craig, and I'm Director of Product Marketing at Human. I'm pleased that you're to join us for the next 30 minutes or so, where we will discuss safeguarding the humanity of digital interactions with AWS and Human. Igor will begin by outlining the threats to your web applications and how Amazon can help. Then I'll follow him to discuss in some more detail the threat from sophisticated bots and how we can complement AWS to provide an enhanced solution. So Igor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And let's get started. So first, I want to start with a few words about security at AWS. Security has always been the top priority at AWS. We even call it Job Zero. And we think of security as a shared responsibility, where AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, its infrastructure and managed services, and our customers are responsible for the security in the cloud, responsible for securing their workloads running in the cloud. But it doesn't mean that our customers are on their own. We do have a number of tools and services to help you get the protection that you need. We also often encourage our customers to use as many managed services as well as our partner solutions such as Human Security. This way, it can help alleviate some of the heavy lifting in protecting your workloads and help you focus more on your business. And here's a quick overview of a few categories and security services that you can use. Starting with identity area, services like identity and access management that helps you control the permissions and roles to access your AWS services in your environment. Amazon Cognito helps you manage sign up and sign in process to access your web applications and mobile apps. In the detective control area, you have services like AWS CloudTrail that helps you monitor API calls to AWS services in your environment. AWS Config that helps you set the policies for some of the configuration baseline and also get notified if these policies get breached. Now switching to the infrastructure and applications, you can see a few services highlighted here that will be the focus of our discussion today. Such services as AWS Shield, AWS WAF, and the Firewall Manager. These are the main services that can help protect your application running in the cloud. And aside from this, you can also leverage AWS Network Firewall that can help protect your traffic in and out of your virtual private cloud, as well as Route 53 Resolver DNS Firewall that can help control access to some of the malicious domains and make sure that you can have the right policies to enable access only to the domains that are safe. Now, switching to the data protection services, one of the main ones is Key Management Service that helps you securely store data in the cloud, and it helps you manage your encryption keys. And now switching to the incident response, I'll be talking quite a bit today about the Shield Response team. That is the main team that helps you manage through DDoS attack scenarios, and it's associated with the AWS Shield service. And other services just like config, AWS Config and AWS Lambda helps you automate the incident response and collects some extra data for your auditing and analysis. And now let's look at some of the most common attack vectors that our customers are facing these days. Starting with the first category, denial of service or volumetric attacks, also called distributed denial of services if these attacks are coming from a large number of sources. Some of the popular attack vectors are SYN floods that are trying to overwhelm your network resources, reflection attacks, trying to leverage transfer protocols such as UDP and amplify the attack volume. And then web request floods. This type of attack vector is trying to send a large number of HTTP requests to your web application. And the main goal of this attack is to basically impact the availability of your application and its ability to provide services to your users. Often these denial of service attacks are also associated with ransom attacks, where an attacker is basically trying to extort some money from the customer by threatening to launch a DDoS attack. Now, switching to the application layer attack vectors, some of the most popular ones are described in a WASP Top 10. That's Open Web Application Security Project. I think that the list of those attacks was just updated last year, and some of the examples of the attack vectors are SQL injection, cross-site scripting. And the main goal of this attack is trying to leverage some of the vulnerabilities that you might have in your application and try to get access by injecting some scripts and get access to some valuable data. And then the last category that we'll be focusing more today is bots. The reality today that on average, about 50% of the traffic that is reaching your application is coming from bots. Now, it's a bit difficult maybe to determine this number because it's also tricky sometimes to distinguish bots from humans, and I'll let Peter talk more about that. But also, I wanted to say that not all bots are bad. There's a number of bots that you want to have on your website, such as search engine crawlers that actually help to optimize the SEO for your website and enable the users to find whatever they're looking for much faster. Also, there's a number of bots associated with the social media website, health monitoring, and so on. So not all the bots are bad. And I would say that to define a bad bot is basically any bot that a site operator does not want on their website. But some of the most popular bad bots are content scrapers, scanners, and probes, and those are basically trying to leverage some of the vulnerabilities on your website to get access to some classified data, extract maybe some commercial valuable data from your sites. And since these are automated users, and they're often much more efficient than humans to try to find those vulnerabilities. And when they come in large volumes, they present a DDoS threat as well. So basically, the attacks coming from bots contribute to both of the categories that I just talked about a few moments ago. Now, talking to our customers, these are some of the impacts that concern them when they see bot traffic on their website. Talking about the infrastructure aspects. So if you think of 50% of the traffic coming from the bots that they don't want on their website, that takes basically 50% of the infrastructure resources to handle that amount of traffic, which causes some extra costs. And that also causes some downtime and instability. Also, it gets challenging to deal with this type of traffic and isolate bots from humans, from the traffic that you would like to reach your application endpoints, and it basically takes a lot of efforts for your team, and obviously lost income. On the application side, there's often complaints about the stolen data, compromised credentials. These bots are basically extracting some of the really valuable data and causing some fraudulent transactions, spam, and so on that cause some financial repercussions. So let's talk about what are the best practices and what are the main services to help you deal with those types of attack vectors when running your application on AWS. And these are the three main services when we're referring to application protection services or perimeter protection services, starting with AWS WAF, which is Web Application Firewall. This is a cloud-native service that is very easy to deploy, and it scales with traffic. Depending on which resource you want to protect with WAF, it basically scales with the traffic coming to this resource. And there are three main sources of rules that you can add in WAF. One of them is AWS managed rules that are curated by our threat research team. The second type is marketplace rules. There's a number of partners that integrate the rules with AWS WAF. And then the third type is custom rules. You can use the flexible rule engine in AWS WAF to add your own rules. And those can vary from very simple ones to really complex. Now, switching to AWS Shield Advanced, this is a managed DDoS protection service. And you're probably wondering by now, if it's called Shield Advanced, is there a service called AWS Shield? And you're absolutely right. AWS Shield service is always there running in the background. And if you remember when I was talking about the shared responsibility model, AWS Shield is the service that is always running there, protecting AWS infrastructure and the managed services. And I would say that about 90% or so of the attacks are mitigated by AWS Shield, and most of them are mitigated automatically. But there are still some of the attack vectors that can reach your endpoints that might not impact AWS infrastructure and the managed service availability, but they might impact the availability of your application. And Now, switching to AWS Firewall Manager, I think of it as an umbrella service that actually helps you manage AWS WAF, Shield Advanced, and other service policies across multiple accounts and services. And I'll talk about a few more details on these services in a few slides. So let's look at AWS WAF high-level architecture. So the way it works, basically, AWS WAF can be associated with Amazon CloudFront, which is our global service that helps deliver your content fast and securely to your users around the world, as well as regional services such as Application Load Balancer, Amazon API Gateway, and AWS AppSync. And the way it works is that you configure a WebACL or Web Access Control List. That is like a container of rules. So when you just configure this container, there's no rules there. You can just set the default action, can be block or allow. And then when you start adding rules, when you add some rules into the WebACL, when this resource receives an HTTP request, this HTTP request will be processed, and it will be processed against those rules in the priority order that you define. Now, those rules, as I mentioned before, can be AWS managed rules, partner rules, or your custom rules. You can also use different entities such as IP sets, that is a set of IP addresses or prefixes that you can also use in your match patterns and associate with different rules in the WebACL. You can use regular expression patterns, also associate them with the rules for more complex matching patterns. And also you can combine some of the rules into rule groups, and this way you can associate them with different WebACLs instead of manually having to configure the same rules again. In terms of visibility, there's actually two dimensions. The first one is metrics. For all the rules that you define in the WebACL, as well as the default action of the WebACL, you have the metrics available, and you can choose which metrics you would like to see. You can also configure alarms based on the thresholds in terms of how many requests matched a certain rule, and you can get notified as well when that event happens. You also have much more detailed logs that you can store either in Amazon S3, in CloudWatch, or using Kinesis Firehose, you can stream them to the analytics of your choice. And those access logs have really detailed information about which rules a certain request has matched, as well as all the HTTP request details. So that can really help you for the auditing or the analysis purposes. Now let's talk about some of the mechanisms that you can use to protect yourself against bot attack vectors. And I would start right away with AWS managed rules. This is always a good starting point because these rules tend to provide you protections about some of the most common attacks. And the first two rules that I would like to describe is IP reputation list and anonymous IP list. IP reputation list is maintained by our threat research team, and this is the list of IPs where we see most of the malicious traffic comes from, and it kind of helps you right away reduce the traffic coming from the known locations where some of those attack vectors are coming from. Now, if you don't expect your users coming from some VPNs or hosting services, you could also enable anonymous IP list, and this will automatically block any requests coming from those locations. Now, the next step, if you're still seeing quite a bit of bot traffic hitting your website, is to consider bot control managed rule group. Bot control helps you eliminate some of the common and pervasive bots. And those typically are identified based on the patterns we're seeing in the user agent header, as well as the source IPs where these requests are coming from. And there's other mechanisms that are used to determine those common and pervasive bots. And what we're seeing is that these types of bots comprise about roughly 50% of the bot traffic. And then another managed rules to consider is account takeover prevention to protect your login endpoints. Now, one of the mechanisms that can really help slow down bots is AWS WAF capture. That's something that we introduced recently, and it can help you challenge some of the requests that that seem suspicious. Especially you want to protect, let's say, login endpoints. And the way it works is it's not really a very difficult task for a human to solve this puzzle, but it tends to be quite a difficult challenge for a bot. So it does really help to throw a big challenge to those types of automated users. And also you can configure the immunity time to make sure that your users don't have to solve this puzzle all the time. And yeah, that can help eliminate some of the friction. Now, if you're new to AWS WAF and perimeter protection services, we always recommend to kind of start with this WAF security automations. And what it is just a CloudFormation template. It automates the deployment of some of the baseline protection that includes some of the managed rules for the common attack vectors, such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, also protections against HTTP floods, configuring some of the baseline rate-based rules. Also, it helps you configure other AWS services. They can scan your application logs, and based on the patterns, for example, the error rates, it can also dynamically add rules to AWS WAF to block those those IP addresses where those types of malicious requests come from. And also, there is another type of mitigation that this solution configures that could be helpful in mitigating bots. It's called honeypots, and the way it works, it basically inserts invisible links. Those links are invisible to humans, but when bots are traversing your website, they will spot those links and they will try to follow them, and that's when we'll detect them and we'll be able to add those IP addresses to the block list. So definitely, I would recommend to get started with this solution before diving into some kind of more complex configuration aspects. So this is really good baseline and good foundational protection. And now let me switch to Shield Advanced, which is the DDoS protection service. So I did talk a little bit about AWS Shield, and this box in the upper left corner that provides the basic protection at layers 3 and 4, and mainly it's targeting to protect AWS infrastructure and its managed services. Now, when you put your AWS resources under Shield Advanced Protection, and you can see some of the resources that you can protect on the left-hand side, including our global services such as Amazon CloudFront, Route 53, and Global Accelerator, as well as regional services such as Application Load Balancer, Classic Load Balancer if you still happen to use one of those. And you can also protect your compute endpoints directly by protecting an elastic IP, and also Network Load Balancer. So when you put any of those resources under the protection of Shield Advanced, we start baselining your traffic, and this way we're able to detect anomaly and provide the mitigations much faster. You also get access to the to a lot of extra events that can detail all the specifics about DDoS attack vectors targeting your resources. And one of the main benefits is that you get access to the Shield response team. This is a 24/7 team. It's the same team that is protecting AWS infrastructure and managed services against DDoS attacks. They're doing it on a daily basis. And this is the team that will help protecting your resources and your application endpoints from some of those volumetric attack vectors. Also, we would recommend to configure the health checks for the resources that you're putting under protection of Shield Advanced and proactive engagement. This way, the Shield response team will be able to monitor those health checks. And when they're seeing any of them that are becoming unhealthy and any attack patterns, they'll be able to reach out to you based on the contact configurations that you provided. And now let's talk about some of the financial benefits when you use Shield Advanced. If you use Shield Advanced together with WAF, you don't need to pay for WAF. You only pay for Shield Advanced. There's only a few exceptions, which is just a few of the managed rules as well as marketplace rules. But most of the managed rules as well as the custom rules are included in the price of Shield Advanced. Also, if you use Firewall Manager to configure Shield Advanced policies or WAF policies, those also come at no cost if you use Shield Advanced. And last but not least, you also get a benefit of the cost protection. If you have to scale your resources in order to absorb the DDoS attack traffic, you can apply for the reimbursement for the number of resources that were used during the attack. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our global services such as Amazon CloudFront and why you would want to consider using this service to protect your workloads, especially against DDoS. Amazon CloudFront has a large global footprint, which is more than 310 POPs, and it's expanding constantly. And now talking about the distributed denial of service attack, the best way to protect against it is the distributed defense. And this service is able to disperse the attack traffic across multiple POPs. And also one of the important aspects, our DDoS mitigation services are deployed at the edge of the network. And when you're protecting Amazon CloudFront, fronting your regional resources, you're getting inline protection, meaning that the time from detection to mitigation is almost zero. We're scrubbing all of the traffic in real time, and if we're detecting any patterns of the attack vectors, we're able to put the mitigations almost in real time. So we always recommend to consider using Amazon CloudFront when protecting your original HTTP endpoints from the DDoS attacks. Now, just want to talk a little bit about the firewall manager. This is a very useful service if you have a number of accounts or AWS resources that you would like to protect. It helps you improve your security posture by automating the protections. When you configure policies associated with any of the services supported by the firewall manager, specifically focusing on AWS WAF and Shield, but you can also use policies for the security groups, AWS Network Firewall, Route 53 Resolver DNS Firewall. When you configure those baseline policies, those policies will be able to propagate across all of the accounts that you configure in scope, and also across all of the resources that you want to protect. They can automatically remediate when new resources are added, so they can automatically put those resources under the protection. Or you can choose to get notified when you have some resources that are not still protected by AWS WAF, Shield, or other services supported by the firewall manager. And also, the firewall manager is integrated with AWS Security Hub, which is like a single pane of glass to be able to visualize all the events that are emitted by those services that whose policies you configure in the firewall manager. So it's really easy, especially to monitor the events across multiple accounts. And now I just want to quickly talk to you about the typical architecture and to help you kind of have the the best resilience, especially when it comes to DDoS attack vectors. And I'll also talk a little bit about why this is the case. So I was talking quite a bit about how to mitigate against different attack vectors, but it's also important to make sure that your architecture is elastic and it's scalable, that if it takes some time to mitigate against DDoS attacks, you still want to be able to continue serving traffic to your users. So you want to be able to absorb the attack traffic for the amount of time it might take to mitigate against those types of attacks. And now, starting from the compute side, you can see that the compute compute resources are configured in an auto-scaling group. So this way, based on the demand of the attack traffic, this auto-scaling group can scale and increase the amount of compute resources. And the compute endpoints are fronted by the elastic load balancer. This is really helpful, first of all, to obfuscate the compute endpoints, and also to reduce the attack surface. Elastic load balancer is also able to scale automatically upon demand and still be able to receive the connections even from the malicious users, and this way you could still continue serving traffic to your users. And as I was mentioning before, we always recommend to put Amazon CloudFront in front of your HTTP applications and associate it with AWS WAF. And also, we would always recommend to put Amazon Route 53 under protection of Shield Advanced. Route 53 is already benefiting from quite a comprehensive protection from AWS Shield, but when you put Route 53 zone under protection, you will get some extra visibility into the metrics in terms of how many DNS requests might be hitting your zone, in case if you're undergoing through some of the DNS attacks, as well as you can benefit from the cost protection. So this was kind of a quick summary of some of the best practices that you can follow to make sure that you have a resilient architecture to withstand some of the attacks vectors that are happening this day on the internet. And now I would like Peter to talk a little bit more about how you can deal with some of those sophisticated and adaptive bots that just don't go away. Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Igor, and thanks for outlining that set of solutions from Amazon so comprehensively. So bots have evolved, and what we've seen is that they are showing a greater level of sophistication, and we'll see that in the next few slides. But first of all, let's have a look at what some of your industry peers think. So, as you know, many organizations have accelerated their digital transformation over the last couple of years because of what's been happening with the COVID epidemic. But 75% of them think that bots have had a negative impact on their digital transformation initiatives. 90% of your peers agree that they need to future-proof their business against the next generation of bot attacks. And 78% think that they're underprepared. They've got WAF and DDoS and CDN protection in place, which are absolutely essential, but they feel they need more to deal with these sophisticated bots. 84% of them are believed to be controlled by sophisticated cyber criminals. So there's brains behind these attacks. So why is this such a problem? Well, it's hard to tell what traffic is human and what traffic is bot. And this is where some conventional defenses like WAF or CAPTCHA can let you down. So sophisticated bots and humans both use your web applications as they were designed to be used. Now you can see the comparison on the slide here between a human session path and a bot session path. Both get to the same end result. Perhaps they're buying something or they're leaving a comment, but you can see the human path is much more meandering, much less direct than the bot. The bot selects, buys, job done, but the human checks for alternatives, they read reviews, they look at delivery costs. Now, when you see trillions of events and analyze these, you're able to determine the difference between humans and bots in your applications. And you can use these differences. And these are some of the signals that human collects to determine whether what's accessing your site is human or not. So WAFs and CAPTCHAs are useful, but sometimes sophisticated bots can outwit these. So this is an example of a bot attack on a retail site that was analyzed by human. So what was happening here, that someone was using a botnet for a carding attack. This is also known as credit card stuffing or card verification. And this is where criminals use sophisticated bots to perform many automated attempts to either use or test stolen credit card credentials. So the graph you can see is a spike in login attempts. And then you can see the analysis of this spike in the data on the left. So over a period of less than an hour, the botnet cycled through thousands of IP addresses to evade detection and blocking by a firewall or a WAF. You can see that there were only 40 attempts coming from each of these thousands of IP addresses. So you can see that out of the 1,000 attempts, only 6 made it to the My Account page. Now that's how we determined whether the bot was successful or not. So 6 out of 4,000, it doesn't sound like a very high success rate. But when the attacker's in there, in those 6 accounts, he's got complete control of the customer account, and he can buy gift cards, transfer money out of that account. He's got complete control. And of course, one of the reasons that attackers use bots is so that they can scale up their attacks. So once the attacker knows that this is working, they can scale this up to however many IP addresses that they've got control of. So what we've seen is that bots are sabotaging your customer experience. Bots can make your customer experience worse. They can take over accounts. They can buy items with your customer's credit or points or air miles. And of course, that hurts your brand. Also, they can post spam messages that take your customer out of your app and onto an inappropriate site. And of course, that will damage trust in your app. Now, this is the first of our case studies, the first of 3 case studies. And this is an online banking customer who thought that the bot management feature provided by their CDN would be adequate for stopping bots. But it wasn't. Bot traffic was passing straight through the CDN bot management filter, completely undetected. Now, the bank was having to deal with fake account creation, account takeover, and then the criminals would use these accounts to apply for loans, and they would transfer their money to their external accounts. And Human was able to determine that 14% of the customer's traffic was actually bot traffic. So what were the bots doing? Well, they were using thousands of stolen sets of usernames and passwords to crack real human user accounts, account takeover. Because the business's existing solutions were missing this, they engaged Human. Now, Human immediately detected this bot activity. With Human's guidance, the customer implemented friction in the form of multi-factor authentication when Human detected bot activity. Because our bot or not decisions are so accurate, so precise, that meant that mitigation was effective in stopping the bots, but that the real human users whose accounts were compromised didn't need to be blocked. They kept using their accounts without disruption, without having to call the bank call center. The online banking provider kept those customers happy and avoided all fraud losses. Of course, the bank did eventually force their users to switch credentials, but what Human enabled them to do was to do this in a controlled manner, without thousands ringing the help desk at once with problems gaining access to their account. Because they trusted Human's accuracy, they were able to target the multi-factor authentication friction and only put friction on the bots. Now, bots can also have an impact on your organization's data. Bots can be used to manipulate your app with fake likes, clicks, and of course, this risks poisoning your data or your CRM system or disrupting your supply chain. Bots can also scrape your site for pricing information or sensitive data. And this is another example of a business with bot management already in place that wasn't giving them the detection they needed. This is a global entertainment company that was marketing a feature in their platform as fraud-free, but they were finding this difficult to deliver. And this is where Human got involved. Now, this was a very sophisticated botnet that was bypassing the CDN and app defenses, making it past 2 different bot management solutions. And it was sophisticated because it was scalping tickets, but what it was also doing was scanning relevant news and media sites, automatically determining when to operate to maximize profit. So this was operating during one of the COVID lockdowns. And what it was doing was monitoring government websites, sports websites, and news sites to determine when was the best time to pounce and scalp those tickets so they could maximize their profit. So Human got involved, and we were able to stop millions in fraudulent event ticket sales frauds, and of course, greatly improve the customer experience. Nobody wants to go to a ticket site and find that all of the tickets have been sold. But then there's also the cost implications of bots. Bots can impact the compute costs and application costs. Now, new application accounts are a sign of positive growth, but they can also pollute your marketing data. And if these new accounts are bots, you're potentially wasting your marketing budget marketing to bots. And then in the next case study, I'll show you about the quantifiable costs to your business of wasted cloud compute. And then there's also the cost of denial of service, or bots buying up all of your stock and sending customers elsewhere. So competition is good, but who'd have thought a competitor could actually cost you money, or you pay for them to do the competitive analysis on your site through price scraping? So this online retailer discovered that 70% of the traffic on its site was scraping by competitors looking to undercut their prices. So Human was able to help this retailer reduce their scraping, and for every 1% we were able to reduce their bot traffic, we were able to save this customer $250,000 in infrastructure as a service compute costs per year, and also the administrative effort from their own staff in dealing with this bot problem. So how does Human do this? What makes Human BotGuard different from other bot management solutions? Well, it may be a little bit surprising, but what's the one thing that you've seen today that you can't escape in the modern world? So if you turn on the television, if you open a newspaper, if you drive to work, if you open up your internet browser, the one thing you can't escape is ads. And it's actually ads that make Human different. Now, I'm sure you're aware that every time an ad is served to you, it goes through an auction process where your attention is sold to the highest bidder. This process is secured by Human. Advertisers don't want to advertise the bots, and Human's business is founded on stopping this. We've been doing this for more than 10 years, and we're the dominant supplier of bot detection technology. In fact, more than 85% of global advertisements are verified through Human, and Human secures 15 trillion interactions weekly. Now, of course, our focus today is on application security, but I just want to make it clear about what makes our solution different. And it's that every ad on the internet is a sensor for Human. And knowing what sophisticated bots looks like requires seeing them. And we see them all over the internet more than any other vendor because of this reach. Every ad collects bot signal for Human. And when you search, shop, stream, or socialize online, you're contributing to our collective protection. So on this slide are some of the logos of our customers. Some you'll recognize, some not. But the one at the top here is one that probably stands out. Amazon uses us. Now, I'm sure you'd agree that if Human is good enough for Amazon, it's going to be good enough to meet the needs of most organizations. Amazon's got some of the best engineers in the world. They rarely work with outside vendors because they've got the ability to make whatever tech they need in-house. Our signal is so unique and our detection so precise that Amazon uses us. So how do you use Human with Amazon? Well, to get this enhanced protection from sophisticated bots to complement what Igor has already outlined to you to protect you from more sophisticated bots, it's easy. So it's easy deployment. There's no modification to front end or back end code. You simply create an AWS Lambda function for your integration, deploy to Lambda Edge, and add a CloudFront trigger, all the time maintaining a seamless user experience with Amazon. So just to summarize about what makes Human different, we've got our superior detection techniques. We've got 2,500 different signals that we collect that we crunch through 350 plus algorithms. We've got this internet scale and availability because of these 15 trillion interactions that we verify every week across all of our customers, and see more than 85% of consumer devices before they've reached your applications. And then we also do good with this information. We work with internet platforms and law enforcement to research and take down bots. And you can learn more about this on our website if you'd like. Now, if you'd like to try Human, you can get a complimentary 30-day audit of your applications via AWS Marketplace. So please search that out. If you'd like to know more about Amazon Web Services solutions or Human solutions, please feel free to contact either Igor or myself on the email addresses that you can see on the slide. So with that, I'd like to wish you a good day. I hope you found the presentation useful and enjoyable. And Igor, is there anything you'd like to say to finish the talk?
Thank you, Peter. Really some exciting technologies. And I wanted to say that we're looking forward to hear for your feedback and questions, and looking forward to learn about your use cases and help you keep your workload safe in the cloud. Thank you.
Thanks, Igor, and goodbye.